Hello, welcome back. How are you doing? Welcome to the new season. It's not my job to formally introduce you to it, but here I am. First tactical analysis of the season. It's only right to start with the curtain raiser. Community Shield, Crystal Palace, Liverpool 2-2. Crystal Palace winning it on penalties in a good slash bad penalty shootout. And thoroughly deserved winners, I thought. I thought in the first 15, 20 minutes, Liverpool were going to absolutely run away with it. I thought some of their football was exemplary. Fantastic, really showing off the quality that the new signings could look to bring to Liverpool. But as the game went on, Palace grew into it. Their discipline, their quality in counter-attacking situations was excellent. It picked apart the areas where Liverpool were weak and vulnerable, and there were. And I think even if we just start off by what we're looking at here, I thought going into the game when I saw the lineups, that from Liverpool is mental. How attacking do you want it? Jones was the quote-unquote six, and I think Curtis Jones is a good player. I think he's got a lot of qualities, but I think if he's your six, you're leaving your back four with a lot of work to do. And Palace just exploited that excellently. I think they're a fantastic back three team. In my personal opinion, I think Oliver Glasner has the best back three system in the entire league. And I support a club that has a back three system, but I just think his compactness, his defensive discipline, the roles he gives the players, I think the talent ID as well with the players that they've recruited for the system and the players that he's gotten the best out of since coming to the club, it's all been so good. He's really brought what's made this system so good to Palace, but then also adapted it to the key components he has in this team, and he deserves a lot of credit for that. And we're going to go over the Liverpool attacking phase first because that was, I would say, the more complex and kind of the most fun thing about this. As you can see here, Palace would be in this sort of 5-2-3, very mid to low block, just trying to keep it as compact as possible, with the front three not exactly engaging, but trying to just block off any central progression that Liverpool could hope to commit with. Liverpool's system, it would be slightly fluid and flexible with an absolute preference for that left-hand side. It would be with Kirkes dropping into almost form back three, playing the left centre-back role to give Jeremy Frimpong license to push up and play high. He was initially, I would say, in the half space, very narrow as a right-sided attacking midfielder, but as the game wore on, he then moved that to the right-hand side, allowing Salah to come inside, operating as a sort of wider striker, where Frimpong would look to maybe receive the ball a little bit deeper. Salah would push onto a position on the defensive line, just really looking to receive it in dangerous areas. Didn't really offer much in build-up. He did a little bit more in the second half, but as I say, Liverpool had such a preference for that left-hand side. Frimpong wasn't almost necessary in that right-hand side to drop so deep. Curtis Jones as the six in this position could look to drop into the defensive line to help progress the ball, maybe spread the back four out a little bit wider to find passes in and around that defensive shape for Crystal Palace, maybe bring the likes of Mateta up, maybe even Will Hughes or Adam Wharton. It was Daichi Kamada at the start of the game, but he went off with an injury after about 20-25 minutes. So maybe him dropping so deep forced one of these players to come up and give more space into the midfield, which was where Liverpool were trying to create. Szoboszlai as well, trying to receive it in between the lines. So let's just say if Curtis Jones or Van Dijk would drag that front three up a little bit higher and create a little bit more space between Hughes and Wharton. If Szoboszlai got hold of the ball, he could look to spread the play to the far side, with the back five maybe coming in narrow, especially if Salah was tucked in narrow, dragging Mitchell inwards. If he got a little bit of space in the middle of that shape, he could fire the ball out to the right-hand side. Frimpong getting the second goal for Liverpool through, I think it's fair to say, a fortunate bit of play. It was an absolute cross. He's tried to stab it to the back post, trying to get the ball out wide on the right where they could hit it to the far post where Liverpool would have that left-sided overload. Was a clear tactic. Worked without working as intended, if that makes sense. Where Liverpool did get a lot of joy in the first half, they struggled a little bit in the second half. Jones and Szoboszlai, I thought, were getting worse and worse with their build-up as the game went on. Palace, I feel like, were getting a bit more comfortable, a bit more compact as the second half went on, and Wharton and Hughes were intercepting a lot of balls that came out of this defensive zone of the pitch and were able to launch a few counter-attacks. I think Jones is a good player technically without real range and without the ability to thread through passes between lines. And ultimately, I just feel like wasn't progressive enough and wasn't brave enough, and just lacked that little bit of quality. I feel like this game missed McAllister. I'll give him benefit of the doubt because I don't know if he's had injury issues throughout pre-season. I can understand why he's gone for a certain type of player over Utara Endo in that holding midfield position with Gravenberg not being available because of the technical quality. And Endo's not amazing at receiving the ball on the half turn to be able to progress it from back to front. He's not, an amazing passer to the technical level of Gravenberg or Jones or McAllister or Szoboszlai. But I was surprised not to see McAllister. There may be reasons, so I don't want to sound too critical when there's a more than acceptable reason. But Florian Wirtz, I thought, was the difference in that first half for Liverpool. His knowledge of space is exceptional. Whenever there was a bit of room on the pitch that opened up, he was there. It's like he was just reading the situations before they even happen. Like even in these situations where you'd see Kirkes deep and Gakpo higher up, and Gakpo would hold the width on that left hand side. Wirtz would receive it on this area. It doesn't matter if Liverpool were already overloading that side of the pitch with Jones on the ball with Szoboszlai over. If the space was there, he was exploiting it, and Liverpool were trying to exploit that big style. It could be even with in between midfielders. Let's say if Wharton's come out to this area to try and close down Szoboszlai, Hughes, maybe caught over here, maybe potentially shadowing Jones in. If Mateta's gone to press Van Dijk, he could receive it in between the lines. And anywhere he wanted to affect the game would, even in higher up areas. And the first goal kind of came from this with Gakpo dropping deep and then moving inside, dragging Munoz with him. Again, Wirtz onto it, receiving the ball in this wide left position. It causes Richards to have to come over and gamble and leave space between him and Lacroix. And then this gave more space for Ekitike to operate in. And with great link up between the pair, Ekitike moved inside on his right foot and into the bottom corner. And to be fair, there were some really good signs of chemistry between Wirtz and Ekitike in this area because Wirtz taking up certain positions meant that players could be dragged out of position. It also maybe gave Ekitike more space to operate in because he wouldn't just occupy the back line, especially when Salah came inside. It gave Ekitike more license to drop into space and get involved in the build-up. Again, overloading that left-hand side. Especially then, if like Gakpo could move inside, Kirkes could underlap or overlap and commit to that attacking overload. Would maybe drag Sarr back, or Munoz would have to track, and again, Palace just couldn't get enough numbers over there. And Ekitike dropping in, combining with Wirtz, and then especially if Richards would go to engage with Wirtz, if it was in a position where he felt like he could go towards, he would. If Wirtz dropped in too deep, he wouldn't risk leaving so much space between himself and his defensive line to come and press. And then once Kirkes had pushed forward, once Ekitike was getting involved in play a bit more, then you'd see Richards maybe not engaging, leaving himself a little bit more disciplined to just make sure that that back five wasn't getting exposed. I do think Lacroix, especially in that second half, played fantastically. I think for a central centre back, Lacroix is fantastic. His knowledge of space is brilliant. His distances between his centre backs is top draw, and his duelling ability is class. He's such an underrated centre back for me, Max Lacroix. Mark Gahey gets the plaudits, and I feel like he's got the higher reputation, probably because he's English. Do not sleep on Lacroix. I think he's absolutely phenomenal. I think he transforms a couple top teams if he goes. And to be fair, Ekitike in that first 20, 25 minutes I thought was excellent. His touch, his technique, and his view of the vertical movements around him was excellent. Especially if he drops deep and gets on the ball, that gives Gakpo more permission to move inside. It gives Salah more room to maybe make movements off of his wide centre back or his wing back. Szoboszlai and Wirtz can make movements either side of him, and he can take a touch out of his feet and play. There's a certain level of potential that I think if it's unlocked with Ekitike could transform this Liverpool side. Obviously, there's still chemistry issues. There's still balance issues. I say issues. It's not so much issues, but it's more just things that will need to be built up over time. And I think if they succeed in doing so, it's huge. But obviously, the potential of Isak coming in, where does that leave him? I guess we'll see. But there was the bones of some real quality play there from Liverpool, and there was a lot of things to admire. But where they struggled a bit was off the ball and defensively, and Palace executed that game plan perfectly, and I'll go over it now. Palace grew into the game. As the game went on, they didn't do a lot of attacking in the first half, especially in the first 25, 30 minutes. But they did grow into it. They did start to flex their muscles a bit and show their quality, of which they have plenty of. And they could go direct and play short in equal measure. Having Mateta as the focal point for your long balls is excellent. His back to goal play is top draw. aerial threat, and he gave Konate a good battle. And his ability to link up with Eze, Hughes, and Wharton for second balls was good. His ability to flick it on for maybe Ismail Assar, making the movement in behind, was class. A lot of really good verticality from Crystal Palace, but he did his job from the direct threat. He also did his job from short passing situations really well as well. I thought Mateta pre-Glasner was one of the worst strikers in the league. I cannot believe the striker he's developed into. It's a bit Joe Linton without the need of moving him into another position. And when they did build up short, Liverpool would look to press. Not completely man to man. They sacrificed a man in the pressing stage to leave themselves with a +1 in the defensive line. And that would be with leaving Chris Richards as the free man. Ekitike would press onto Lacroix from Richards, preventing that pass. Salah onto Gahey. And Gakpo would drop into Munoz. Now, the issue with this is in quick turnovers and fast-paced attacks that Palace do like to operate in. They don't really like to hold onto the ball unless they have to. If there's direct opportunity, they will take advantage of it. And Munoz could get free on that right-hand side. And Kirkes was tasked with staying with Sarr, so he'd come inside into this area. And so it meant that Munoz could get free on the right-hand side, get into really advanced attacking positions and put in a good number of crosses. Some half-decent deliveries, one especially in the first half, which needed someone to get on the end of it, a couple wayward ones. But him being a threat on that line, and to be fair to Gakpo, he did a decent job, but there's just a couple of real fast-paced opportunities which when you're a winger, you may be caught high up the field, and so there's a bit of distance you have to track back, and you just don't have that defensive awareness that a fullback has. So that was an area where Palace got a bit of joy. It didn't directly result in a goal or anything, but there was threat levels in that regardless. Wirtz and Szoboszlai would push onto the midfielders with Jones tracking Eze, who could drop into form a midfield three. Sarr could as well, but it would be more likely Eze dropping in that Jones could track, and Sarr almost operating as the little man striker alongside Mateta to look for flick-ons and getting behind as Mateta would look to hold the ball up. Frimpong pressing onto Tyreek Mitchell, as I may have just said, I can't actually remember. And so they would look to go direct, would look to build up short, but it would still remain in the same basic principle. If Mateta could win the ball, then he could look to link up. And I thought Adam Wharton was excellent. I mean, it's repetitive now to go on about how good Adam Wharton is, but his technique, his ability to know what pass he's going to play and quickly execute it is something you don't really see English midfielders have. It's something we've been crying out for since like Michael Carrick, which was completely underutilized. Just his pass for the second goal, which I don't think gets enough credit because I don't think it looks like an overly amazing pass. I would say from a half casual perspective, but the technique to execute that quickly, get the timing of it right, I thought was superb. And him receiving it from deep to get on the ball and look to progress it forward, coming away from his marker, and Liverpool's midfield could be stretched because Hughes and Kamada could operate in this left centre back role, pushing Mitchell on higher up, especially if Eze came into a more narrow position. It meant that Mitchell could occupy more of a higher position. Wharton could do slightly similar on the right-hand side, but he would look to just receive the ball, take a touch, play it forward. And I thought Liverpool's back four was all over the place. As I said, they surrendered that 1+ on the pressing stage, but left themselves with Van Dijk as the spare man. Not a bad spare man to have. The issue is the back four with two new fullbacks looked completely unorganised. The lack of protection from the midfield without a real natural sitter. And it just felt a bit of a mess. It looked sloppy at points for a couple reasons. Mateta's movement, I thought, was really good. At the moment he got free of Konate, Van Dijk couldn't react, and that direct threat really did break him apart. Kirkes and Frimpong, to be fair, as much as they can get caught a bit positionally, have the athleticism and have the pace to recover and match up their markers. But you can't get away with that all the time. There's only so much you can cheat. And when you're not at a defensively high level, that will cost you a little bit, and you're asking a lot of Van Dijk. And I feel like Van Dijk in this game was caught in between engaging and dropping off. You see how he got beat for pace, and then he makes the mistake for the first goal for the penalty. A bit of a panicky tackle, which, to be fair, you don't really see him do. But I thought for the second goal, and I thought it was strange that the commentators tried to say he was playing offside weirdly. I don't think it was playing offside. It was Mateta who dropped into a position to receive the ball. Jones, Wirtz, and Szoboszlai obviously just not being amazing defenders in their own. I mean, comfortable enough for attacking positions, but when that's your midfield three, that's not most amazingly disciplined. They create space that a pass can very easily go into Mateta. Van Dijk obviously sees that and then engages to press into Mateta, leaving that defensive line free. And to be fair to Tyrick Mitchell, he pulled off a few really good runs from deep. Not necessarily to receive the ball, but just to maybe create space and discombobulate that already unorganised back line for Liverpool. And so that pushed Frimpong deeper because he had to drop to track the run. You could argue that maybe Frimpong should, uh, let him go a bit. Maybe just think it's a bit of a too aggressive run. But I can understand why he doesn't feel like he can risk that. So Frimpong gets dragged deep. The moment that Van Dijk gets dragged out, it just creates a massive issue in that defence when your midfield isn't disciplined enough to cover space. And so then the pass comes through to Sarr from Wharton, as I just said, with his technical quality. And it's a fantastic goal all round, the pass, the finish. Lovely stuff. But it does just come from that lack of midfield protection, just that lack of discipline, leaving the defensive line with decisions to make, unorganisation within it because of the new players, and with the verticality of Palace, with the direct runs of Sarr, with the direct runs of Mitchell, with Mateta capable of dropping in, maybe drawing defenders out, creating space for others to run into. It was a threat that really disorganised Liverpool and exploited their lack of cohesion, the lack of consistency, and the lack of midfield protection. Not a game we usually see Van Dijk have. It was actually quite surprising, but again, until we see a sustained period of bad form in the league match, I'm not going to be too critical of Van Dijk. Alisson did, to be fair, sweep up the odd time. I felt like his decision making was a bit inconsistent. I thought there was a few times where he really dug Liverpool out of a hole with sweeping off the line, getting to balls with fantastic reading of the game and starting positions. Another couple of times where I felt like he was a little bit late, a yard or two off, and wasn't reacting to things that a year or two ago he maybe would have. Whether it's the injuries, whether it's just having that effect that he's not maybe got that spring to be able to have that confidence to go and close things down quickly unless he's absolutely sure. I don't know. And when it was in more sustained attacking periods, you would get players dropping back. You'd get Gakpo into a left back position. You get Curtis Jones into the defensive line, and it surrendered a lot of space for in the centre of the park because then you're left with Szoboszlai, Wirtz, and Salah and Ekatike. I understand their idea of having to fill that back line to make it harder for Palace to penetrate. But then you're surrendering a lot of quality in the centre areas, and with the likes of Eze, with the likes of Wharton, even Will Hughes, you're giving good players the opportunity to pick locks and to take touches of the ball and find their angles and find their space. And it felt like this back six was almost compensation for the lack of defensive discipline and trying to plug holes artificially as best they can. But it's a work in progress. It's going to take some time to bed all these players in. And Bournemouth isn't far away. Friday night, first game of the season. I can't wait. But I'd love to know what you guys think. Cheers, lads. In a bit.